Carson Wentz and the Indianapolis Colts, it looks bleak. Yes, the Colts did not give him support verbally after the season, said that they weren't guaranteeing him anything. Well, right now, it looks bleak, and by March 18th, he'll probably be traded or released. That's when his $15 million of his base salary is guaranteed.
Today's the Super Bowl, and originally the Super Bowl pertains to two teams, either the Cincinnati Bengals or the Los Angeles Rams in this instance, but that didn't stop Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, Ari Meirov, the entire NFL media circuit to come out with absolute bombshells of NFL news. So we're going to start with the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going to try to go as fast as I can until the Super Bowl starts. We have information dropping on Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, Jordan Love, and currently Carson Wentz, and even Russell Wilson. I'm going to start out with Carson Wentz, and if I'm quick enough, I'm going to try to get you an update on Kyler Murray before the game. If not, we'll get you an update after the game, or at the worst tomorrow morning. But before we get to the content, we're giving away a subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel, $500. We're also giving away $500 to a follower of ours on Instagram. Now that we get all that out of the way, break!
Now it all happened so fast, but just even thinking back just to where we came from, dug ourselves out of a hole, and then the last 2 weeks just didn't get it done.
Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Guys, the Indianapolis Colts might be one of the most tragic stories in the entire NFL. 4 years ago, I remember reading an article on how the Indianapolis Colts are in cap nirvana. This was following the 2018 NFL draft. Bear in mind, during that time, they drafted Quentin Nelson with their first pick, Darius Leonard with their second round pick. Their defense was up and coming. Their offense looked pretty damn good, and they had Andrew Luck, who was supposed to be the next coming of Peyton Manning, so long as his shoulder remained okay, which was a pretty big if. Little did we know that that would be Andrew Luck's final season in the NFL, and unfortunately, instead of being able to use that excessive cap space to build around Andrew Luck, the Indianapolis Colts had to spend the next 4 years trying to find a quarterback that was even half as competent as Andrew Luck was in order to try to make the most out of this remarkable core that the front office has built. Unfortunately, they weren't able to do so. Starting out with Jacoby Brissett then turned into Phillip Rivers, then eventually transitioned into quite possibly their biggest swing for a quarterback, which unfortunately, it seems like they are admitting that it was officially a miss. Over a year ago, Carson Wentz was absolutely disgruntled in Philadelphia. He posted one of his worst seasons yet with 15 interceptions to 16 touchdowns, completed only 57% of his completions, and he was being exposed as a very overly aggressive quarterback that didn't really hold himself accountable and was just absolutely horrific at reading defenses. Eventually, things got so bad that the Philadelphia Eagles decided to start Jalen Hurts, their second round QB, over Carson Wentz, which I'm going to admit the drafting of Jalen Hurts in of itself was very strange, because the year before, Carson Wentz had one of the best years of his career, throwing for 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Needless to say, things got so bad in Philadelphia that Carson Wentz would get benched, Jalen Hurts would start a couple of games, Carson Wentz would get alienated, the locker room got toxic, Doug Peterson eventually tried to tank a game on national television, and before you know it, all of the core pieces of the Philadelphia Eagles team that won a Super Bowl for them just 4 years prior ended up leaving. Which, to be honest, I am a Dallas Cowboys fan, but I'd be lying if I said I was very disappointed. I personally think that if a head coach brought your team its first Super Bowl ever, then you should do whatever it takes to give that head coach as many chances as possible, unless if the game just passed him by. If he was there for like 15, if it was like a Tom Landry situation where clearly his game planning was becoming outdated, then I kind of understand it. But in this instance, the Philadelphia Eagles decided to cut ties with Doug Peterson, which would make one presume that, hey, we're going to stick with Carson Wentz, but that's not what they ended up doing. They traded Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts for a third round pick and a first round pick. pick. Which, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, that is one hell of a bargain looking back at it. I remember at the time people were roasting the Philadelphia Eagles for this trade. It seems like the Indianapolis Colts made a remarkable decision to bring back a quarterback that clearly thrived with Frank Reich, their current head coach, and they put the best pieces possible around him to compete. I mean, it doesn't get easier to be a quarterback than being the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, where you have multiple good offensive weapons, but in addition to that, you have the best running back in football on your team. In a year where Carson Wentz had Jonathan Taylor on his team, he did fairly well, throwing 27 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, over 3,500 yards, but I don't think his statistics really tell the tape. I think Carson Wentz would have potentially been able to stay pat, but I think what ended up ruining it for the Indianapolis Colts was the fact that they weren't even able to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars to make it into the NFL playoffs. And I feel like that's just a horrible way to end your season. And as a result of that, we got some very interesting news. And this isn't like scraping the bottom of the barrel. It's like something that's considered to be official, that's going to happen. And it's the fact that the Indianapolis Colts are looking to trade or release Carson Wentz. This is coming to us from none other than Chris Mortensen. Mort says that Wentz will probably be cut or traded before March 19th, when his $15 million base salary becomes fully guaranteed. So yet another quarterback that could potentially get traded this offseason, in addition to Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, and that's just all off the top of my head for now. Now you might be looking at me and say, Mike, how do we know that this is a legitimate report that we could trust? Well, the person who reported that Carson Wentz is more than likely done with the Colts is good friends with Jim Irsay, according to Locked on Colts podcast. So it seems like he's a fairly credible individual, but this is also fairly consistent with things that we've been reporting on this channel the moment that the Indianapolis Colts season ended. I mean, Jim Irsay did state that quote unquote big changes are coming, but Frank Reich and Chris Ballard are safe. So that could only really mean one thing: big moves in terms of players. So who's probably the biggest change they could make that's a player? That would be Carson Wentz. But another big warning sign was at the very end of the Indianapolis Colts season, Frank Reich did something that he didn't do last year. If you remember last year, at the conclusion of the Indianapolis Colts season, Frank Reich said that he wanted Phillip Rivers to return to the Indianapolis Colts. When he was asked about Carson Wentz, whether or not Carson Wentz was going to return, he said, we'll evaluate Carson Wentz's play, and we'll evaluate how we're coaching him, how I'm coaching him with each position in the pass game, take it apart piece by piece, and then put it back together. We loved the team that we had this year. We knew everyone we brought in this year. We expected to play winning football. Next year's roster will be next year's roster. I don't want to open it up about one player and then start talking about all of them. So it sounds like he's just trying to avoid talking about Carson Wentz there, but it kind of gives you a hint that the Colts are ready to move on from Wentz as a result of the season. And it looks like the Indianapolis Colts revolving door of quarterbacks is going to continue. So who do I think is a realistic get for the Indianapolis Colts? I think they're going to probably be one of the many teams that are going to be pursuing Russell Wilson. Derek Carr is staying put on the Las Vegas Raiders, so I don't expect him to go anywhere. Maybe they hit up the Arizona Cardinals and see what's going on with Kyler Murray, which we have to bring you guys an update on that soon. If you're a Colts fan, what do you think about Carson Wentz? Do you think he put up a good season? Do you view him as an adequate QB for your future? Because if you look at his body of work and you just look at his playing statistics, there are worse quarterbacks out there. But the thing is, I feel like Carson Wentz is maybe a more mediocre version of Jimmy Garoppolo. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. I feel like Jimmy Garoppolo is that type of player where he is a game manager that might throw you out of games sometimes, but he doesn't force balls into triple coverage the way Carson Wentz does. There are some ducks that Jimmy throws, and as a result, that could ruin games for you, but it seems like that happens to Carson more often than not. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about this report, man. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.